SaferWatch and law enforcement. SaferWatch is a powerful tool that enhances public safety by improving communication between law enforcement and the community it serves. Through the SaferWatch platform, agencies can send real-time emergency and non-emergency alerts, keeping residents and visitors informed about critical incidents, safety advisories, and community updates. Additionally, SaferWatch allows the public to report crime tips, suspicious activities, and threats, providing law enforcement with valuable intelligence. SaferWatch tips have led to the prevention of school shootings, stopped sexual predators, caught wanted fugitives and burglary suspects, and has even prevented suicides. This easy-to-use two-way communication tool ensures faster response times and helps protect the community proactively. By empowering both citizens and law enforcement, SaferWatch fosters a safer, more connected community. For more information, visit SaferWatchApp.com or download the free SaferWatch app on iOS or Android. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. I'd like to call this episode our Summertime Rewind. And today we're just going to briefly discuss our initial first 10 episodes and tell you why we started the podcast. So the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association was created 16 years ago for deputies by deputies, and it started off to provide legal coverage to deputies that were involved in a critical incident, whether it was a shooting or an in-custody death or a bad crash. And it grew from there into our Lend a Hand program, which is our benevolence program. So if a deputy or a sheriff's employee of any rank or sworn civilian professional staff falls on hard times, the sheriff can come over and ask us, my boss, the executive director, Keith Dean, or me, if his or her employee is eligible for a Lend a Hand donation. And we'll show up with a check or cash, no questions asked, for that employee to help get back on their feet. So those were the first two pillars of FDSA, was legal and then the Lend a Hand program. And that grew into life insurance, some accidental death and dismemberment in the line of duty death coverages, things like that. And then lately, in the last few years, we've really grown exponentially in training. So my job has been to create the training, facilitate the training, and then implement it across the state. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but that's what led us to the podcast. So on our podcast, we picked the name A Tactical Pause. That name came from, there's a new phrase in law enforcement that came out maybe a decade ago called de-escalation. And de-escalation is actually an old concept that got recycled. It's something we did in the early 90s when you would slow the train down, like at a critical incident. Somebody's barricaded in a home or they're taking themselves hostage. And instead of us kicking in the doors and going in using deadly force, we try to slow everything down and see if we can negotiate this person out or just take our time. If nobody's in imminent danger, why are we rushing it? Why are we going to, spark this up and make it worse? So we slowed things down. As the years went by, law enforcement went from that mentality to a warrior mentality. That was during the war on terror and the first Gulf Wars and things like that. And we shifted our stance to being warrior mentality. Then we started going back to a guardian mentality of it's our job to guard the city, to guard the citizenry. So the concept of de-escalation was recycled from the 90s to today. As de-escalation grew, what happened was people were trying to describe it. And there was a sheriff here in Florida, and I don't remember who it was, who said basically de-escalation is taking a breath and taking a tactical pause. We have the SWAT team there, the negotiators there, all of our emergency staff, equipment, and apparatus are on the scene, prepared to go to the next level. But let's hit pause and let's reevaluate. Do we have a crime? Do we have authority? Do we have to make an entry? Do we have to create a catalyst to speed this incident up? Or is there a way we can slow it down even further? So the name of our podcast became A Tactical Pause. What I see in law enforcement is things change so rapidly, whether it's body-worn cameras, real-time crime centers, drones, AI, handling calls for service on a shortened staff. Sometimes we need to take a tactical pause and look at what all we're doing and what's the mission of law enforcement. To me, today, the biggest problem facing American law enforcement is we lose sight of the mission. And it's real simple. The mission is to serve and protect. We do a great job of protecting, and sometimes we don't do such a good job at serving. So if we slow down and we take a tactical pause and we unpack what's going on around us or in the county over next to us or in another agency similar size, then we can come back and reevaluate how we're doing things. Are we meeting the mark? So that's where the name of our podcast came from. A Tactical Pause. So going over our first 10 podcasts, first 10 episodes of the year, we did like a history lesson of how FDSA started, which I just summed up for you listeners just a few minutes ago, and what our mission is. And again, Keith Dean is the executive director and my friend. And Keith came on and gave the origin story of FDSA and then what his vision is. So right now, FDSA is in all 67 counties in Florida. There are over 25,000 members. So what that means is there are sheriffs in Florida that buy a membership to FDSA for their entire agency. It could be the basic membership where there's some benefits, or it can be, quote, an enhanced membership where they have legal provided to all the employees. There's also individual memberships. Maybe my sheriff doesn't provide FDSA memberships, but I want to be a part of it as an individual. I can pay for that out of my own pocket and receive the same benefits as somebody whose sheriff is paying for all the benefits. When you sit down with Keith, you get to see his vision, and part of that also was the conference that we just did, which leads me into our second episode, which was with Larry Bearsnoy, who is the CEO of TAC Ops. So Keith and Larry met, and we decided we wanted to have a Florida-centric deputy sheriff-themed tactical and law enforcement conference in Florida. So Larry's company, TAC Ops, is an amazing company. Larry is just a wealth of information. He was a tactical operator up in New York State. He's a philanthropist. He's an entrepreneur, and he took his skill set and he created these conferences. He has multiple conferences throughout the Eastern Coast. He used to do some on the West Coast, but after COVID, that changed. So we brought in Larry as a partner, and our first ever conference was 2025. It was in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was a huge success. That was what we did episode 2 on, and I'm proud to tell our listeners today that our second conference will be in May 2026. It will also be with Larry and TAC Ops. It will also be in Jacksonville, Florida, and we think the number of attendees will double. We received tremendous feedback on that conference. So our third episode was with FDLE Deputy Commissioner Matt Walsh. Matt is a thought leader when it comes to resiliency, when it comes to how does a law enforcement officer finish his or her career and finish it strongly and walk away as a whole person. They entered law enforcement as a whole person, and how do they leave the law enforcement career as a whole person? So Matt and his team, which includes Eric Jester and a bunch of other wonderful people at FDLE and at a host of partner agencies, created the PCIS, which is the Post-Critical Incident Seminar. That is a multi-day event that's completely free for law enforcement and their spouses or partners. I had the privilege of attending that, and it was better than I could have ever imagined. Matt and Eric and their team do a wonderful job. And as somebody who's been in law enforcement a long time, I wished and through a lot of transparency, I could have used that class 25 years ago. It would have saved me and my family and anybody that knew me a lot of heartache, frankly. But you go down. I don't want to give away the community or the county, but there's a wonderful organization that donates their building, and you get accepted into the program, and you go down, and it's immersive. You meet with law enforcement officers, their spouses from all over the state. It's usually a small group, maybe 25 or 30 folks who come from all walks of law enforcement, who are all struggling with something. Some of the the scars that they picked up in their career, and we come together as a shared experience. We share some of the things that we've encountered. We shared how we handled them incorrectly. We share how they've impacted us negatively and our families negatively, and maybe even our career. Then from there, Matt, his staff, the counselors, the peers, they help you rebuild. They give you a template. They give you some tools for your toolbox to help you go back to your job, go back home, and work on being a whole person again. And it creates a community. There's a tremendous follow-up that happens out of that. And it's just it's a wonderful experience. So if you, as our listener, if you want to know more about that, or there's somebody that's in your family, somebody that you love and care about that you think would benefit for that, I would encourage you to go to FDLE's webpage or Google Florida's Post-Critical Incident Seminar. There'll be articles about what it is, and then you can reach out to Eric Jester or somebody on the staff and find out when the dates are. If you can't remember any of that, you can go to our website, fldeputyssheriffs.org, and we usually post it there. Or you can email me directly, and I will 100% put you in touch with the right people. And my email address is jcreamer, like coffee creamer, jcreamer@fldeputyssheriffs.org. So if you want to find out more about Florida's Post-Critical Incident Seminar or anything we're going to talk about today, you can always email me, and I promise you I will put you in touch with the right people. So again, Matt Walsh, Eric Jester, FDLE, fantastic program. Changing lives. The next episode we did was with my friend, Walton County Sheriff Mike Atkinson. Sheriff Atkinson and I have known each other for decades, back when we were line level people that worked for the Tallahassee Police Department, and we encountered a lot of things together, some very tragic, some very warm, and some just trauma bonds. And Mike and I talk almost daily, and one of my closest friends. And what Mike and I talk about a lot too is not just the old days, but we talk a lot about what's going on in law enforcement. We're both lifetime learners, and we both have an interest in being a futurist or forecasting things that are coming. So on episode 4 with Sheriff Mike Atkinson, we talked about how things were when we started in the early 90s and how things are now and where they're going. Some of the technology is frightening. Some of it will alter the landscape of policing for the better and will lead to safer communities. And some of it can be used very maliciously with nefarious outcomes. So that episode, me personally, had I not started dipping my toe into what emerging technologies are, I probably, as a listener, would have been very interested in that, because we do talk about everything, whether it's Bitcoin, the challenges with AI, the challenges with cybersecurity, with cyber threats, with cyber crime, and what modern day police technology is using to implement those things or combat those things. And here's one example. There is a market leader that sells body-worn cameras. The body-worn camera is a fantastic tool, right? It's an instant accountability and provides instant transparency for a law enforcement agency or a deputy sheriff or a police officer. And more often than not, it shows the tremendous courage, bravery, and professionalism that our law enforcement officers show every day. It doesn't catch them doing things wrong. It catches them doing things right, okay? But getting back to the heart of this, there's a company that makes a body-worn camera that, when activated, it records everything from the point of view of the deputy sheriff or the police officer. Later, when the deputy or police officer leaves the scene and they dock the camera or they upload the video footage to write the report, the software that's been installed in the camera starts writing the narrative of the police report for them, which is great. It's a great time save. It helps the deputy collect his or her thoughts and helps them build like an outline of how the report should go. But it also strips away the human element of what I see as an individual. Does that make sense? So one of the biggest landmark cases in use of force incidents is Graham versus Connor. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. And what Graham versus Connor is about use of force. And it's as an individual, as a deputy sheriff or police officer, it's my fears based on my experience that count, not what a machine saw and predicted what I should have decided to do or what I didn't. So my concern with that one piece of software is, yes, it will speed things up and it's a force multiplier. It will help a deputy sheriff or a police officer write a report. But it also strips away some of the human critical thinking. Those are some of the things we talked about in episode 4 about emerging technologies. And then we really talked about this too when it comes to AI. How do we make sure that we've all seen the deep fake videos that are out there? How do we capture and insulate our videos, the videos of law enforcement taken with body-worn cameras? How do we make sure those aren't corruptible? Because these days, you're not going to win a case in court unless there's video. That's just the way it is. It wasn't like that 30 years ago. But those are some of the topics that Sheriff Mike Atkinson and I talked about in episode 4. And again, we did a comparison of when he and I started and then where we are now and what's coming. And there'll be a follow-up podcast to that. And then I encourage you also to go to our webpage. We do a lot of training, a lot of presentations with the Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office. Specifically, Major George Pereira is a subject matter expert nationally and I would say internationally on computer crimes, AI crimes, cyber crimes. And Major Pereira has been just a wonderful asset to us, thanks to Sheriff Rosie. And we'll have another class soon with Major Pereira. So keep an eye out on our webpage or our app and see when that is. I would encourage you to tune into that podcast or come to the training. So the next podcast we did was, again, with a friend of mine named Dr. Michael Steele. So Mike is a former United States Marine. He's a former law enforcement officer. He's a deputy sheriff in Orange County, Florida. And he went on to get his doctorate degree in leadership and organizational change. So what we did was we sat down and we talked about Mike's philosophy on leadership. And we talked about personal accountability and accountability-based leadership. So how do you as an individual, how do you continue to strive to do your very best when you feel kind of beat down at work, when you can't get a day off, when you can't get promoted or the transfer that you think you've earned? How do you still remain accountable to yourself? How do you move forward and give it your very best, even when you don't feel like you're getting the very best back from your organization? Mike did, it was a great talk. And then Mike is probably our most popular instructor when we go across the state. And I'll talk about our training more at the end of this episode, but anytime we have a class with Mike, they fill up pretty quick. And the class is always called Oorah Leadership and Tip of the Spear Transformation, which is the title of Mike's book. And you can find that on Mike's webpage. If you just Google Dr. Michael Steele, Oorah Leadership, OOHRAH, Leadership, and Tip of the Spear Transformation. Mike's class is a very personal class. He asks you to dig deep within yourself. And again, personal accountability and accountability-based leadership. And here's a personal note. Because of Mike, it's not just about how to be a better leader at work or handle calls for service or things like that. It's about being a genuine, transparent person. Some of the things I've heard Mike speak on this topic maybe a dozen times, maybe more than that. I learned something different in every class that Mike presents. And some of it has actually, I've applied it to my life, and it has altered the course of my life. It altered the course of a relationship I had with my brother because of the things that Mike talks about. So it's a wonderful class. Again, I encourage you to go to his webpage or look for an upcoming training. And you can find that on our webpage. And we'll be right back. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. Now back to the show. Episode 6 was with our friends at Survive First, SURVIVE, and then the word first, FIRST, Survive First. Karen and Doug Monda created this. They came on our podcast, and their testimony, if you will, is heartbreaking, it's fascinating, and it provides hope for you to continue on. They say that law enforcement officers, first responders, experience dozens and dozens of critical incidents throughout a career, way more than the average member of the public. And Survive First came from what happened in Doug's life, how Doug fell apart, how he got beat down from his career, and some of the things that he began thinking about himself. It's also about resiliency, how he and Karen came together as a couple and they found help. And part of it is the journey to find help and how difficult it was to find the right help. So Karen and Doug partnered with a whole host of folks, and they created the Survive First website, the Survive First Foundation, and they offer help for any first responder that needs help with critical incidents, with post-traumatic stress, with complex post-traumatic stress, or with some type of, risky behavior like alcoholism or addiction to pills. They can put you in touch with somebody that can help you. They can save your career, they can save your marriage, and they can save your life. So they have just a wonderful organization. Dear listener, if you're struggling with some of these things, I encourage you to go to their webpage. If you're listening and you know somebody that's struggling, go to their webpage. If you are a philanthropist or you have some money and you'd like to donate it to see that it actually changes lives, go to their webpage. Karen and Doug Monda, some of the best people on earth. Their organization is life-changing. I met Doug years ago on the conference circuit and heard his story, and it was just, it altered my life. So episode 7 piggybacks on the episode 6. So episode 7 is with After Action. And specifically, it was with a counselor named Shelly Stevens. So again, full transparency, Shelly is my personal counselor. After Action is a program that is in California. They have a woman's side and they have a male side. But there's a 2-week tune-up. There's also a 30-day immersion. And it's also to help any first responder, whether it's corrections, dispatch, detectives, SWAT, whatever your role is, firefighters, whatever your role is, if you're struggling or you've been struggling and you want to stop the struggle, or if you just want to take a tactical pause and get back on track, Google After Action in California and see what they offer. This episode with Shelly was just in depth about mental health and resiliency. Shelly's episode starts off with childhood trauma. There's a correlation between a lot of first responders who get into the field because they want to help people because somewhere in their childhood they were victimized or they were abused. So there's a test called the ACE test, and most first responders who take this test hit pretty high on it. There's a lot of common themes with people that get into the first responders realm and some of the things they suffer with as the years go by. So a lot of coping mechanisms that all first responders have, I talk about law enforcement, but I mean all of them, is coping. And sometimes that turns into risky behavior. Sometimes that turns into, alcohol, pills, gambling, excessive working out. It can turn into, numerous divorces, inappropriate relationships, things like that. And if you want to get off the merry-go-round, you have to dig within yourself and be like, hey, I've run out of runway, and the way I've been dealing with this stress is to white-knuckle it. It's not working anymore. And Shelly's episode talks about that a lot. It also talks some about what it's like to be the partner or married to a first responder and what the wife or spouse or partner goes through being married to a first responder and the stress that's associated with that. So that is a wonderful episode. It's in depth. That is a raw episode where Shelley and I get very, very real, and there's some strong language in there, but that's how strongly we feel at FDSA is who is our clientele. It's deputy sheriffs, it's police officers, it's firefighters, it's EMS, it's people that work in detention and dispatch, and we want you to finish strong. Our motto is serving those who serve. So one of the things we try to do is keep our listenership involved with organizations or agencies that can help you be a better first responder and serve you by helping you become well. Our next episode was with Sheriff Rosie in Miami-Dade. So Sheriff Rosie is, again, there's multiple podcasts with Sheriff Rosie. So she is the first of many. She's the first woman ever elected to the office of sheriff in Miami-Dade County. She's the first person of color, female, elected to sheriff in Miami-Dade County. She's the first sheriff in Miami-Dade County since the 60s. And all that came about under Amendment 10, which was a constitutional amendment here in Florida that started back in 2017. And that actually was spearheaded by Sheriff Mike Atkinson, who we talked about earlier, when Sheriff Atkinson was the president of the Florida Sheriff's Association. But Sheriff Rosie, in our podcast, talks about her childhood, the things she had to overcome, the drive that she's had as a law enforcement professional, the hurdles she had to overcome as a woman in still a male-dominated field, and then her rise to success, her vision, why she decided to run for sheriff. And then we talk about the journey of what it's like to be a brand new sheriff in a brand new sheriff's office. Again, there are no mentors in Miami-Dade County that Sheriff Rosie could rely on because there hasn't been a sheriff there since the 60s. So we also talk about the network that was created by the Florida Sheriff's Association, where Sheriff Rosie or other sheriffs can tap in to their neighboring sheriffs and learn how to do things and how to come together. So it's a fascinating story. Sheriff Rosie is a fascinating person. She is a wonderful person to meet. If you have a conversation with her, you'll leave feeling better about yourself. But what she's doing in Miami-Dade County is just unparalleled, and she's a visionary, and she is one of the strongest people I've ever met. But listening to her story is fantastic, and I encourage you to listen to that. That's episode 9 that we did. So the last episode we did just 2 weeks ago was with Chris Summers. Chris Summers is a retired law enforcement professional. Chris started his career with the Florida State University Police Department. He went on to the Tallahassee Police Department and rose through the ranks to the rank of captain, retired, went on back to a university police department where he's the police chief, and left there and finished out his career with the Leon County Sheriff's Office. So Chris is one of those unique people that has experience in the university policing realm, the municipal policing realm, and the county policing realm. And on top of that, Chris has been on numerous task force. He's a graduate of the SBI Advanced Officers course. He's a thinker. He's a big picture thinker. And what Chris and I talk about is, managing the monotony of your career. There are plenty of times in any career, not just law enforcement, but any career, where you get stale, or you get a little beaten down. You get stymied because of politics or because of trends, or frankly, you got left behind because of timing. So what Chris and I talk about is how to reinvigorate your career and your life, because they go hand in hand, right? I can't be a whole law enforcement professional or a whole first responder if my home life is a train wreck, and vice versa. So in our discussion, we try to find balance. We also talk about some of the trends that are going on in American policing today, that are not just specific to Florida, but that are unique to all of American law enforcement. So we really break that down, and we go in great detail about the challenges that today's police officers face, how to overcome that, the challenges of what today's law enforcement leaders face, and how to overcome that. Because as we know, the world is changing so fast, And as a deputy sheriff or a police officer on patrol, you have all this data, all this intelligence coming at you. There's all this technology they want you to use. There's all these things that have to be implemented, but you still need to take a tactical pause, if you will, and take care of yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, financially. Take care of your marriage, your relationships outside of work, and try to embrace the ever-changing flow of technology, but employ it in a way that you don't get burnt out, but you actually get remotivated. So it's a very complex subject, and it's a fascinating listen. Chris and I also teach a class. It's called Power Up, Reinvigorating Your Life and Career. And you can find more about that class at fldeputiesheriffs.org. And that'll be, I think we're teaching 3 presentations of that later this year. So that is a summary of, that's our summertime rewind right there. And here's what's coming up for our listeners too. Hey, P.S., if you have an idea, if there's something that you want us to talk about, send me an email, jcreamer@fldeputiesheriffs.org. If you have a question about any of the podcast episodes that have been published so far, I would ask you to email me, negative and positive. Ask me questions, and then we can come back and follow up with those questions or those thoughts or those ideas, and we can create a podcast maybe tailored more towards the needs of our listeners. One of the other podcasts that we did was with David Odom. He's the director of the Consolidated Dispatch Agency in Tallahassee, Florida. David is a leader of the first responders. He has one of the biggest dispatch centers in Florida. His dispatch center is unique in that it is funded by the city, it is funded by the county, and then David himself as the director answers to a board, not an individual, but to a board. And David talks about the unique setup, including budgeting, personnel, benefits, of how to run that organization. But we also really camp out on what it's like to be a dispatcher, to be a telecommunicator in today's world. And all this evolving technology also is washing over all of our telecommunicators, from text to 911 to software that if somebody calls in 911 and they don't speak English, there is interpretive software that can then start transcribing what somebody else is saying in a different language. And on top of that, there's just 1,000 things of points of input that come into a call taker, to a dispatcher. And it's also a fascinating career. And those folks don't get the attention they deserve. So in that episode with David Odom, we talk about not only the challenges of his unique facility, but the challenges of being a telecommunicator. And frankly, we need to do a better job of praising those folks. They are the light in the darkness. Having been in law enforcement as long as I was, I dodged literally a lot of bullets because of a really good dispatcher that knew me, that knew the area, that inherently knew me. And they knew my if my voice changed to a different pitch, or they could just read the scenario just by listening, and they could help. They're just wonderful, wonderful people. So that's a wonderful episode as well. So here's what's coming down the pipe for the next few episodes is we're going to meet with Captain Kelly Burke. He's a retired law enforcement professional. Kelly got drawn deeply to the ministry. He was involved his whole life, but near the end of his career, he left law enforcement and became a full-time pastor. Kelly leads the chaplaincy program for the Tallahassee Police Department, and it's a pretty big. His unit is a pretty big unit. Kelly's going to come on the podcast. He's going to talk about how to create a chaplain program, how to implement it, and how to keep it funded, and then how to be relevant. How do you provide spiritual services to people of a multitude of denominations? How do you provide guidance? The importance of being there, to being in the background, to being in the shadows, and knowing when to step up. So it's a wonderful podcast. I can't wait for Kelly to come on. We're going to talk about these things, and I think you'll learn a lot about it. There is a resurgence in Florida with, or a renewed interest with creating a chaplain's program. So if that's something you're interested in, again, send me an email, and I can point you in the right direction. There are some funds that are out there that help create this, but a lot of chaplains programs are funded through 501c3s or not-for-profits. And I can give you some ideas, too, about funding. But Kelly can talk about the nuts and bolts of how to run the program, and then we'll talk about why, the importance of why. Another big podcast we have coming up, I'm very excited about this as well, is Lieutenant Robbie Robinson. Robbie is a lieutenant with the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. He has a presentation called How Money Works, Financial Wellness for Law Enforcement. I've asked Robbie to present at least 3 times in the last 6 or 7 months. His classes are packed. Robbie can save you money right out of the gate. He can show you ways that you might be not using your money to work for you, and he can show you some ways to instantly save money. He can help you with some long-term strategies for your career, for your retirement, for your 401ks, for things like that. We talk about life insurance, car insurance, the pitfalls of being a new deputy sheriff or police officer when you finally get your first full-time job, and some of the mistakes that you might make with making some irrational purchases. It's a really good class. And again, a lot of the episodes that we bring on are things that I wish I had known earlier, or I wish I would have listened and implemented what was shared with me. But anyway, Robbie's coming on. It's just a fantastic class, and his episode is going to be wonderful as well. So after Robbie comes on, we're going to bring in Major George Pereira, who I've talked about earlier when it comes to AI and cybercrimes. George is going to come on to the episode in August, and that's probably going to be a 2-parter because of just all the dynamic and changing episode or information that comes out over and over and over again. So George will be on. And then last week, we just had a presentation over in Clay County with retired Captain Joshua Bitsko. And Josh retired from the Las Vegas Metro PD, and he did a presentation for us, which was dynamic. It was awe-inspiring. It talks about some incidents he's went through, including the sniper incident in Las Vegas, where so many lives were lost, and how he and his team responded, and then the toll it took on he and his team, and then how he built himself back. And it's fascinating, but Josh will be on the show as well. And lastly, as we close out today's podcast, I just want to share with our listeners some of the training that we do or have done. So again, we talked about URA Leadership with Dr. Mike Steele. We talked about Power Up with Chief Chris Summers. So those are 2 classes right there that are about self-improvement, how to be a better at home, at work, a better friend. Those are coming up. Those are dynamic. We've had Major Pereira speak several times about AI. We do a lot about resiliency and wellness. We travel all over the state. We do a lot of classes with Jack Jordan. Jack is one of the preeminent legal experts when it comes to Florida's RPOs and civil orders and how to manage risk protection orders and things like that. We just try to bring leading training to our deputies. All of our classes are completely free. You don't have to be a member to attend one of our classes. We'd like you to sign up and be a member of FTSA, but you don't have to be. But any class that you come to is completely free of charge. And we have wonderful sponsors in Safer Watch, United Badges Insurance Services. And again, if you go to our webpage, you'll see just a wonderful cadre of supporters that we have. But we feed you. When you come to our classes, you'll leave with your head full, your stomach full, and an armful of FDSA swag. And I think we'll lead you down the path of being a better first responder. With that is our summertime rewind. And I appreciate you listening. And again, here's what I would ask of you, listener. Please email me questions, thoughts, ideas, and let us know what we can do to make these podcasts stronger, better. What services can we bring to you? So we look forward to hearing from you. But again, know that the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association was created to serve deputies. It's created by deputies for deputies. And it's a privilege and an honor for me to travel the state and give back. And I can say that as well for Keith Dean and all the staff and the board at the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. So in closing today, I'd like to do a huge shout out to Fiore Communications, which is a wonderful communications company in Tallahassee, Florida. And they do all the magic of making our podcast sound clean and neat and flow well. So thank you, Dave Fiore, and all the folks at Fiore Communications. And with that, we will see you next time here on a tactical pause. Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputisheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputisheriffs.org.